and introduce yourself and your experience with permitting.
Hi, my name's Mary Frank. I'm with the Delaware Valley Orienteering Association. I'm secretary, and I've been here a long time. And I do a lot of the permitting over the last 20 years, on and off, for the club. And that means 8 national events to just local events to educational programs. So I cover the full gamut of it all. Okay. Did everyone hear that?
I can only speak for myself, but yes.
Okay.
And you next, Jennifer?
Hi there. My name is Jennifer Castelluccio, and I'm with Cascade Orienteering Club based out of Seattle, Washington. I have been the land permission coordinator for the last 4 years. The only solo person doing all the permits, which ends up being about 40 different permits per year. Yeah, I was trained by my predecessor who gave me great information to have me move forward. And now I'm actually creating a team and adding one more member who's on this call today. Thank you. And that's my experience.
Okay. Joseph, I see you've joined us. So your turn. And please introduce yourself and your experience.
I'm Joseph Huberman. I'm the president of the Backwoods Orienteering Club, and I'm also on the OUSA board. I guess since I said USOF, you can see how long I've been involved. I've been the president of the club since '78 and have been the primary person that interacts with the park managers and the person who kind of keeps track of the activities of the club so that they work effectively with the park managers.
Okay. So we'll start with you this time, Joseph. What kinds of venues does your club use in terms of what the ownership, what level of government runs them, and what kinds do you find are more or less friendly to orienteering and more or less easy to get through the permitting process with?
Well, I guess we work with city parks, we work with county parks, we work with state parks, and we work with national forest. I think that they all have their ups and downs. The nice thing about our particular national forest is that if you have less than 75 people, you don't need a permit. So a lot of our meets that we have in the national forest are just ad hoc meets, and we're pretty far away from the center, so we don't get so many people that we ever bump into that 75. The state park that's very close to downtown Raleigh, it's actually in Raleigh city limits, and it's a fairly substantial park. That one has a limit of 100 people. We have to get a permit that has the whole year's schedule, and we have to rent a shelter, which is about $100. The permit is like less than $100, but the shelter rentals are approximately 100 to 150. And the crazy thing is we can't rent the shelters until 6 months before. So even though we have a permit for a particular time, we may not be able to find a shelter. The city parks that we're using frequently, we do not need a permit for, as long as we don't occupy an area that we're preventing other people from using. So as long as we're just, using the area casually, there's no permitting process at all. And the county park that we use was just sold. So that's going to be a problem. I mean, they basically sold all the trail areas, and we're sort of stuck with that. And then another county park that we're using is fairly friendly. So that's the situation that we have.
Okay, Jennifer, same question, highlighting differences from Joseph's experience, I guess.
Yeah. So out here in Washington State, Cascade Orienteering, we use state parks, city parks. This sounds familiar. County parks. We also do some college campuses. And then what I like to call the category of government land, which includes Bureau of Land Management, Department of Revenue, Fish and Wildlife, DNR. I would say the easier are your state, city, and county parks to permit. The harder ones are your government venues. They have a very long lead time and a lot of extra checking that needs to be done. Very long process, 9 months, sometimes that long. One of our local state park agencies, Washington State Parks, is starting to increase their demands, wanting cultural, tribal, ecological reviews, things like that before they'll permit, even asking us to provide them with an all controls map ahead of time that they claim that they will go to every single checkpoint and check them first to make sure that they are, not violating any cultural, tribal, ecological. So that obviously is another factor that, they want to have that 6 months in advance so they can look at those points. So that's been one of the newer challenges that we've had.
Okay, Mary, your turn.
Sure. I guess we run the gamut of state park, national, non-historic park, county parks, township parks, and a few college campuses. And we have a tendency to have to get permits. We don't have to do the cultural thing, but we actually have to have sensitive times. For example, we have one that there's bird nesting going on in the springtime, so we have to respect some of that that's going on. Yet on the same side, they're partnering with us, or we're partnering with them to help the Chester County in Pennsylvania. They're actually going to be a model. Our orienteering map is going to help present this model of how they've developed this map. So I think the partnering is kind of important for us in the area. We have, like everyone here, we've lost parks because of park managers, saying that sensitive area, you go off trail. I saw somebody with a comment about off trail. We've lost like Elk Neck. But recently I went down and chatted with the new park manager after 2 times. So this is the 4th since the decree that we couldn't go off trail, and they're going to now allow us back off trail. So I think, part of all of ours, we actually have to, thanks, Boris. There's a certain finessing that has to go on with all of us to make sure that we can abide by some of all their requests in many ways, but also on the same side, we offer training programs, partnering with other events that they might be happening, and dealing with a lot of frisbee golfing. There's a lot of that seems to have cropped up over the last 20 years. So.
Okay. Does anyone want to jump in with a question or comment related to that from the peanut gallery? Or have we covered that well enough in the text chat? I guess I will assume the latter. Okay, so that said, Mary and the others too after Mary, you've got a new venue in your potential O venue in your site, and the managers don't know anything about orienteering. How do you approach that? What resources do you find useful to educate them? Go.
Well, initially, I will go and meet with them. Hopefully, it's before we have a mapper that's trying to map. We have a lot of volunteers. It's nice to have all the energy, but it would be nice to actually get the yay before you go in. But basically, I like to try to go and meet with them, show them a sample of our certificate of insurance, show them a sample of other maps, go with a list of, say it's a state park, go with a list of other state park managers that they can discuss, this to, basically that's, I kind of go with the warm and fuzzy, and then offer, any opportunity that we can to teach, have a free program for them right off the bat, because it only benefits us if we can teach what orienteering really is. We are all tired of it being a compass activity, aren't we? So,
Yeah, I've never personally experienced it as a compass activity primarily.
Well,
I guess it's lucky me not to have started in the Scouts where that's the default.
But there are people that still think that it's, even if they're not Scouts, that's what, they've read somewhere or someone told them or was in a booklet that they had. It's pretty sad. But John, you're lucky that you didn't have it in Scouts.
Yeah.
Okay. So Jennifer.
Yeah. Well, I definitely agree with everything Mary has said so far. I made some notes ahead of time for these questions. The first thing I said was, go beyond the email. You have to set up a personal meeting. Definitely. One thing I have done is created just like a short PowerPoint presentation, kind of detailing our club specifically, giving a lot of references to OUSA. I will often pull a video off of YouTube of an actual orienteering meet and what it looks like when people are running around in the woods. Just show them, because a lot of times they have no clue. They think this is geocaching, right? They think it's people walking around with the phone in their hands, walking casually. The number of times I've had venue owners ask me, how many trash cans do we need? Because you're going to generate a lot of trash. I'm like, we're moving, we're running through the woods, so they don't understand what's going on with that. So anyway, I do a PowerPoint to show people. Oftentimes we will offer a map to them, an orienteering map. One of the venues I didn't mention before is we have permitted some Girl Scout and Boy Scout camps, and they love to receive an orienteering map as kind of a gift to them, because that's great for their programs and trail maps.
Yeah, excuse me, Claire has a question.
Yes, Claire, let's have you jump in now, and other people, you can raise your hands if you want to do what Claire's doing.
It wasn't so much a question as just a story. We had a park where we went and we did all the right things. We met with the ranger. The ranger drove us around the park. He told us what we could and couldn't do. There were places they didn't want us off trail, and other places it was okay. We started doing events there. We did them for about 4 or 5 years, and then the ranger changed. The new ranger didn't meet. The new ranger went online and looked up the sport of orienteering and called me back and said, I don't think you guys want to do this in our park. And I was like, we've done it over and over again. We know we want to do it in your park. But he was convinced, after looking at what the sport was, that we shouldn't want to do it in his park. It wasn't the right fit.
Well, on that, if you don't mind me jumping in, we've had successful orienteering at Valley Forge, and then they decided that we were intruding on their historical park. So that's why I said, non-historical based park, because they didn't even want us to be able to put a stake in the ground, yet it was farmed. Hello. There were 4 farms there when George was hanging out there at Valley Forge. So, lots of stakes went in the ground. So, and over the period of time since. So, I understand we've lost some parks and had to be patient to go back in. For example, Tyler State Park, we lost it for 30 years because the gentleman that was managing the park decided after 10 years of orienteering, and I think it was in the 80s, they actually had over 400 people at one of their events. And after a while, he said no. And we had to wait 30 years to go back in there. So I think part of what we have to do is be patient. It's frustrating, right? Right, Joe?
No denying it. And yes, Joe, your turn to have your say on this.
Yeah, we do a similar thing where we meet with the park. It's usually informal. Usually 2 or 3 of us go. The things that we stress are how useful the map will be for them to outline areas that they can use, like historic areas or areas with plants or stuff like that, or for park planning. And we also stress 2 things that I think are very important. One is that we can locate the controls so that the route choice does not infringe on any sensitive areas. And they give us, a lot of times the park will outline areas. Sometimes they want us to show the areas off limits. Sometimes they say there's an off limits area that has rare plants in it that they don't want us to show off limits, because they don't want people going there to see what the plant situation is. But we are very careful to keep route choice away from that area. And then the other thing that we make very clear is that even though we control the general route choice, it's not people following each other creating volunteer trails. That's something that they're very sensitive about. They don't want people starting to use trails that aren't official trails. So we're careful about that. Some parks basically just give us free rein. Whatever we want to do is fine. Other parks have limits. One of the things that we do at BOK is we have lots of meets. We have almost the second highest number, or second or third highest number of meets. But a lot of our meets are only with 20 or 30 people, because we'll have a meet that's just for Brown and above, just for the advanced course or the expert courses. And so we will tell the park that we're putting on an expert level meet and we expect about 20 or 30 people. And so because we have so many meets, we don't have the huge numbers that cause park managers to be unhappy about. The other thing is that by having a small meet with 20 to say 50 people, it's much easier for the organizers to put the event on. Typically, our events are run by 1 or 2 people who do all the work. And then generally at the end of the meet, there's a few people that will hang back to help pick up controls. And by spreading it out thin, I think that we make it more attractive to the parks. The one park that we do get very large numbers for is restricted to 100 to 150 people, depending on what shelter we're doing, and we're pretty careful to follow the rules.
Good. So Dimitri interjected in the chat there, asking if you've made any or much use of studies of the impact of orienteering on the terrain that have been done, locally, nationally, or internationally. And Mary said that the DVOA has actually done a study of their own. Joseph, Jennifer, have you gotten anywhere with that approach?
I have not. Use that approach yet, but I'd be interested in references to that.
Yeah, I might just put in a story. We got a national park here near DC that they actually, I'm not sure whether they asked a university professor or whether we volunteered, but they had a volunteer do an impact study of our meets. And it seemingly didn't generate the result they wanted, because they more or less ignored the study that they'd been cooperating with when the results came in and said we'd had negligible impact. So that was a little depressing, I have to say, on the
We
how
have one.
useful studies of how much wear and tear we put on the terrain are.
We have one venue who is walking the area after the event with one of our staff members to look for if we've created a new trail or a new quote social trail, and that's been very helpful. Because if you go the day after, you're going to maybe see that, but you wait 2 weeks, at least in Washington, stuff grows over so quickly that social trail is gone. And of course, like Joseph said, people go different directions and no one runs the same way. But if you wait just a little while, nature returns very quickly.
One of the things we try to ask course designers to do is not to put controls in a reentrant or a ditch that the process of going in and out is going to create mudslides, or it's going to tear things up because it's so steep going in and out. People don't always cooperate, but that's one of the things that we attempt to get course designers to respect.
Yeah, there was one or two messages in the chat also about are there any circumstances where you don't need permits other than it being a de minimis number of people involved?
I'll answer my piece to it. Generally, I'd like to be friendly with the parks and say, hey, I got a school group that wants a program. Do you want me to do, a program, a permit for a white course? Half the time it's no, but I usually want to call in. Now I am doing a corporate program tomorrow night, fingers crossed, because the weather's not supposed to be the greatest, but I have a corporate program and they required a permit. It's fine. I mean, I think better to err on the side of caution when you're dealing with, you don't want to assume that, you have the run of the mill. I think for us, we have a tendency to want to make sure that nothing else is going on and that we're going to interfere with. For example, Frisbee golf, we actually have a Frisbee golf national event at one of our parks this weekend. So we really need to stay out of that area. So if we didn't do our due diligence and research, we could have really annoyed the park and probably lost the park. So I think better to be safe than sorry. Sometimes we'll actually have, like if it's a junior ROTC group or a scout group, I'll have them call because we're doing the program for them. So a lot of times it all works out that way for small stuff.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. When we do the major JROTC events, we get them to get the permits. And when we do corporate events, we get the corporation to get the permits because we don't want to be getting too many permits. And it's their event and we're just being essentially hired to produce the program for them.
Most of our events are permitted because they're attendance is 100 up to 500 people. So I would say almost all require a permit for us in Washington State. We have a few private owners out in Eastern Washington when we go out there occasionally that we can do an email exchange with an approval. We still get them an insurance certificate. But otherwise, we get formal permits for, I would say, 99% of our venues.
Okay, I think we've talked that.
Let me add one thing about the insurance. I don't know whether you know it, but you can when they ask for the date of the events, for the parks that we use frequently, I just put in from January 1st to December 31st. And I put in the description as local events, and that covers them for the whole year for whatever we do.
And our insurance doesn't make any fuss over that? I guess they
No.
must not. If you've
No,
been doing
they're totally fine with that.
Okay, I had no idea.
It saves them hassle of having to have permit after permit.
Yeah, okay.
I want to add one comment regarding insurance since Joseph brought it up. Maybe Joseph, Mary, you've dealt with this. I'm permitting events 6-9 months in advance. I want to permit an event for January of 26. That venue will not let me even apply until I have an insurance certificate. OUSA Insurance will not renew their policy for the new year until about early December. This every single year hangs up. Maybe we can talk with our insurance company, see if we can get a renewal policy that starts a little bit earlier, but it can hang up our permitting for early January, February, March events.
Maybe you can talk to Nate Orwashel
Okay.
and see if he can have a
Yeah.
conversation with. He's our insurance coordinator.
Okay. Thank you.
I see him every day, but
He's quite
Yeah.
aware.
I mean, this perennial problem. You're nowhere near the first to
Okay.
bring it up.
He's quite aware of that and has been making an effort, particularly last year, to try to get the insurance as early as he could. But the problem is that it's not just the same insurance company. I mean, it's the same broker, but the insurance works. Stuart, you need to silence your mic. The insurance works that they have to put out a bid essentially to get an underwriter, and that's the holdup. And so he can start earlier, but if the broker can't get a bid, then they can't process it.
Okay, moving on. I don't know if there's a fairness issue, but we'll give you first crack at this one, Jennifer. You've held at least one event successfully in a park, and you want to keep orienteering there. How do you maintain the relationship with the park managers? What all do you do to try to keep that a good relationship that you'll be able to use the venue for years and years?
Mm-hmm. Be nice. That's the first thing. You got to be nice. Communicate very clearly with them. You follow what rules or restrictions they have given. Thank you notes, thank you emails are very important with appreciation. Again, sharing orienteering maps with them. I think one of the things that helps a lot to continue the relationship also is if you're applying and saying, I want to do an event in 2 weeks, quick, turn it around, give them time, give them long lead time. We have had a lot of changeover, a lot of, and who is doing permitting? Since I've been doing this since COVID, but every year, I go back to an event, a venue that I've been at the year before, and there's a new permissions person, new permitting person that you need to work with again. So I often will, cite the previous times we've been there, what we've done before, how successful it's been, how we love being there, those kind of things. You just dote
Do
on
they
that.
tend to have institutional memory of their own, or is each new person a blank slate?
Yeah, you would think that there should be an institutional memory, but sometimes these people act like they've never heard of us. And I will list 10 events we've been there for the last 10 years. They'll be like, oh, explain what orienteering is. So you've got a little bit of, they can look back up and see permit history, but they still don't know what the event is, what the sport is. So both of those things can be two different things and not the same. So I think this is obviously it's a customer service relationship you need to have with these people. It's not just give me a permit, demand, but working with them to make this beneficial for them and for us.
Okay, Mary, what have you got to add?
Well, and promise promise to help with programs, promise to help teach. They have a scout group coming in, say, it's part of the scouting merit badge. I'm a merit badge counselor. I keep it up because I want to make sure that, I can help any park that has a scout group come in. Suggest if there's an Eagle project. We've done this. If you look at our DVOA website, how many permanent courses we have, I can't even count how many. There's at least 14. A lot of them driven by Eagle projects. And we actually have a permanent course coordinator. And that helps the park give scouts, something to do and also something to visit after they're done, and make sure that the permanent course is actually acceptable for the merit badge, as one of the courses. So just be nice, just like Jennifer said, just be nice and make sure if there's any issues from the beginning, do we need another porta-john brought in? Sure. Anything to keep us being able to use a park, we'll jump hoops.
Okay, Joseph, your turn.
Yeah, so I think that this is a really important thing to do, is to maintain the relationship with the park. One of the things we do is we are very strict with our course designers that they don't break any rules. If someone wants to set up a little temporary course that they're going to train on, the answer is if it's not permitted, you can't do it. And we've had to put our feet down a couple of times with people to make sure that they don't break the rules, because losing a park is a really serious thing. I mean, there's a lot of time and money invested in making the maps, and you really don't want to lose it. So we're very strict about following the rules that the park has set up and not breaking them. Now, the only exception to that is if it's going to be less than 3 or 4 people, and it's not going to be announced on the website, and it's not going to be announced after the website, and it's not going to be put up on social media. If someone has a virtual event that does not require putting anything out in the woods, and the only communication is through email with a select group of people, then that we don't restrict, because obviously we can't. It's not a BOK event, and it's not published on our website or noticed in any way. So that's the only situation where occasionally someone will, want to go out with a couple of friends and train, and so they can do that. But other than that, we are very strict about following their rules. We did have a situation where, and this is kind of an interesting situation, where a couple of event directors put out, or a pair of them went out, and they put flags out 2 weeks in advance. And the park supervisor didn't know they were going to do that, and he was really unhappy, and he said, you can't do that. You can't have any more events. So we thought we had lost that. And then, so we didn't schedule any events for that year. And then about 6 months into that, he said, aren't you guys interested in orienteering here anymore? And we said, yeah, we definitely are. And so we're back on track. But he actually was sort of taken aback that we had that the people he spoke to interpreted that they couldn't do it anymore, as opposed to have to be more careful. And that's a park that we use. It has 3 good entry points. So it's really nice to be able to use different entry points, because then you can get, different course designs.
Yeah. So anyone from the gallery have their own stories, comment, question related to this? I don't believe anyone's hand is currently up, and I haven't seen anything in the chat.
I'll make one more comment. Out here in some of the city and state parks, we have these Friends of groups. I don't know if you guys have those in other places.
Yeah.
So there are community members that visit that park, city or state park, and usually it's city, local parks often, and will often provide some trail maintenance and some cleanup. That can be a good group to also stay connected with. Not that they're involved in permitting it all, but when you have events there and they're not aware of those events going on, they will make it known because they're going out for their walk every weekend and all of a sudden 100 people show up and we're running on their trails. So and sometimes we've had some of those friends groups go to the actual land manager and complain. So I think it's good to stay connected with them as well.
Yeah, on that, I'm going to add too, we actually have one of our DVOA members actually runs the trail crew at French Creek. And when we're scouting out and we see, an obstacle, tree down, whatever, we actually will connect with him since he's in charge of the trail crew and clear the trail. So we do what we can to help the park and notify the park when there's a problem with one of the trails, or if there's an unusual weirdness of trash in the middle of the woods. Or we've also reported illegal hunting stands in the woods because we want it clean too. We don't want trash all over the place. So we've actually been good land stewards to be able to make sure that the property stays clean of stuff, and they are very appreciative.
Okay. My next question, I'll start with you, Joseph. Have you got any venues where you've got like a multi-year access agreement that streamlines the permitting process? We have currently one such in QOC that we've had before with Prince William Forest Park, but that's the lone example in my experience.
We've tried to do that in a situation where we were going to make a map for scouting groups or something like that. We said that we would map their property, but we wanted to be able to have one event a year for X number of years. And that's not been successful. So close the door. Anyway, so excuse me. Now the door is
not
closed.
Currently, as far as you having any long-term agreements.
Yeah, we don't really have any law. We've tried, but it hasn't worked.
Cascade Orienteering has one venue, and it's actually a federal government. It's the Bureau of Land Management. It's out in Eastern Washington. It's one specific region or area. They actually approached us asking for a 5-year agreement to hold just one weekend event per year. So it wasn't like we had open access at any time. We would have to predetermine that time with them. My reasoning, I think, is why they approached us on this is that, once again, they were going out and checking all the control points and approving them. So they didn't want to have to go do that every year. So they approved a set of control points, more than what we would use in an event, so we can kind of change it around every year. And then so they can just, as long as that weekend's open, they just approve it immediately. So that's been really nice, but that's the only one we have. And we use them once every other year.
Okay, so that was a labor-saving thing for them, as well as nice for you to have the terms settled.
Yeah.
Mary, has DVOA got any examples?
Yeah, we actually have a scout event that we have on our schedule for Saturday in May. It's etched in stone with the park. Yeah, a couple years, but 10 years ago, they said, well, this weekend is firm forever. So we're allowed to have the scout event. I hate to assume it all the time, and I always check, make sure that they remember, but it's etched in stone on them. So we're thankful, very thankful. And knock on wood, right? We're thankful.
I mean, you have a very big annual scout event, don't you? Like,
yeah, well,
200 at least participants.
I think we were over 400 on the scout event. It's coming back since COVID. COVID kind of messed everything up with the scouts anyway. So Claire has her hand up.
Go ahead, Claire.
So we had a 5-year permit at Mount Pinos when we first started going there that gave us 2 weekends a year. And that expired, never got renewed, but occasionally we have National Forest Rangers bring up this idea of a 5-year permit again. It seems to be something the National Forest can easily do. And I do think if it's a little bit harder to get it set up, but once it's set up, it's easier for both them and for you, because now you don't have to do anything for 5 years other than set a date.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that we've got going on, which is a little bit different than what you're talking about, LA County Parks started something a couple of years ago called the Community Partnership Program. And it's really aimed at things like Little League or soccer groups that use the same park over and over again every week, but they invited us to be part of it. So once a year, we say, here's all of the county parks we want to go to and the date we want to go to them, and we fill out this huge packet of paperwork with plans for all of our events to go in county parks, and send it into them, and then they send us back a little contract that we sign and approve, and it gives us lower rates and stuff like that. So we're an official community partner with the county parks.
Oh, that's nice.
Okay, useful relationship to have, definitely. If no one else has anything to say on that, start with Mary this time. How much of a problem is sharing parks and other terrain that you use for touring with the equestrian and mountain bike users?
We interesting. We actually have a park, Fair Hill, that is heavy on mountain bikes and also equestrian. So we need that permit way in advance, over a year in advance to try to get a permission for them. So they'll do it. And we have very good relationship, knock on wood, with a park manager. And recently he's actually made it easy on himself and divided up the quadrants of the park so we can actually kind of give him an idea what quadrant we'd be in. So, but we have to get that at least 18 months ahead of time. At least.
Do they steer the horses and the mountain bikers away from your event somehow?
Well, they'll assign like sections of the park for mountain biking, for mountain biking races and horse stuff, because it's extremely busy park.
Oh, yeah. But they don't keep like just random recreational mountain bikers from impinging on your events, do they?
No, I mean, mountain bikers, if they're having a big event, the mountain biking event, then they keep that separate. If there's a mountain biker or two, we don't usually have much trouble with mountain bikers in our area. Though there are some school groups.
At least they don't spook like horses sometimes do if you.
Yeah.
If you're moving too threateningly around them.
Yeah, and they're not as they're not as destructive either. When you think of it, most of our controls are off in the woods, But I hope everyone knows that if there's a horse on a trail, that they actually have the right of way.
Mm-hmm.
We do not.
Yeah,
They are.
That's the rule almost everywhere where the horses are allowed. Yes. It seems to be.
That comes as you think, boy, that's an old rule. It is an old rule, but they're bigger than we are, and they don't see as well as we do. So just one of those things that we always remember. But interesting enough, you mentioned mountain biking. I recently got asked by a park if we could run a mountain biking orienteering program. First time. Yep. So
I've never heard of any park teaching that out before.
Asking us to do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is that building relationships. I've been teaching this one camp a couple times every summer for the last 5 or 6 or 7, maybe 10 years. I don't know. And now they're asking me to run a mountain bike course for them. So it's great.
Okay. Anything to add, Jennifer?
I would say that as far as Cascade, we tend to avoid parks that are high level of mountain bikers. We just don't try to go and permit there. There is one park we use that has a section that's mountain biking, kind of like you mentioned, Mary, and the venue just said, hey, stay out of this area and we'll be fine with permitting you. I'm like, okay, great. As far as the equestrian, there's a couple of venues I can think of that we've used. One of them we've kind of haven't gone back to because the equestrian people have complained about us being there, and they were a trails only city park anyway, so that's not really very much fun. Another one we do still use actively in this Summit Trails area in Maple Valley. We'll put up signs at the stands where the horses will, get out of their trailers and stuff, and tell them there's events going on. And then we educate our participants about who has the right of way. But otherwise, we don't run into a lot of equestrian issues, and we just basically stay away from the mountain bike paths.
Joseph, anything to add?
Yeah, well, we haven't had much interaction with horses. Although the park that we're having our event in this week, we're having the radio orienteering championships in Morrow Mountain State Park in North Carolina. And they do have horses on the trails, and they basically asked us to make sure that everybody saw the signs that tell who has right of way and how the horses are supposed to act in relation to people. They're supposed to let you know that they're coming up behind you, and also what we're supposed to do when we see a horse on the trail. The mountain bike situation, for the most part, we only have advanced or expert courses that are going to be in the mountain bike areas, because those courses are designed so that trails are not particularly useful. The other problem that keeps us off the mountain bike trails is they're usually so squiggly that if you spend your time trying to figure out where you are on the trail, you're not making much progress. So generally in mountain bike areas, people are pretty much just ignoring the trails.
Yeah. Okay. Similar sort of question. Many, if not most, parks have some areas they consider sensitive, or some times of year, perhaps, when they consider the terrain fragile. Are parks generally willing to trust you to stay out of those areas? Or do you have other ways of mitigating their concerns over whether people are going to wander into them?
We submit.
Start with you this time, Derek.
Oh. You want me? I can start. We're very careful to, as I said, we follow the rules. And so we're very careful to make sure that we understand where the sensitive areas are, and we avoid the route choices so that people will not go into those areas. And we make sure that the park is aware that we're being very careful about the sensitive areas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll
Jennifer?
Yeah, we'll assure that we're making areas out of bounds, and maybe even show them that on our orienteering course map to show, hey, this is, we've marked this as out of bounds, and our participants are, disqualified if they go in there. People obviously might still wander in there accidentally, but that's how we do that. And we reiterate back to them, we understand what you're asking, and yes, we are doing this. So we're confirming their request to stay out of certain areas.
And Mary, that working with the park around their sensitive areas generally is a smooth process for you too?
Well, it depends. I mean, most of the time we do is exactly what Jennifer says, but we did lose several years ago the use of peak because the sensitive areas happened to get more sensitive and more sensitive, and after a while a big storm went through, and it's like fighting, every time the course setter wanted to do something, they were fighting to put controls in certain spots. So, and we don't want erosion. None of us want erosion. We want the everything to be fine, but they were concerned with too much rain and this and that, that whatever. But then a big storm went through, so kind of took down a lot of the trails, and that took care of using that map for quite a while. So things happen for a reason, I guess. But generally, we usually outline where the out of bounds area is, private property. We have one that has a water plant on it. We have to make sure that they stay out of the sensitive area before the water plant, because they don't want dirt in the water. So we've actually taken caution tape for our national event and outlined that area and roped it off totally. I mean, we don't want to ruin our areas of permission. So we go to a big extent making sure that the out of bounds is really out of bounds.
Okay. So I have more questions, but we've only got a little less than 10 minutes on our theoretical hour. So I want to open this up to questions from anyone in the audience. You can raise your virtual hands. While you're thinking up what your questions are, I'll get in one more at least. I'm pretty sure it's a universal rule that park funding only gets tighter and tighter, and therefore park fees go up and up monotonically. How much of a problem is that for each of you, your clubs? And how useful is nonprofit status? How useful is maintaining your good relationship with the park, doing them favors when you can? Just how much of a problem is that, and how do you deal with it? Jennifer, you want to start?
Yeah. We're Cascade Orienteering Club's doing okay financially, so the prices right now are okay for us, but not to say that they're cheap. We have a range from $200 for a permit up to $800 or plus. It can really range, and it doesn't necessarily range on the number of attendants. Sometimes it does, sometimes it's just on the area. The nonprofit status will, in some venues, allow us to possibly get a decrease. So if they're asking for that information on our application, that's a good sign that they might offer a discount for us. One of our county park programs actually has a fee reduction program. It must be part of a grant or something. If I fill out an extra special form and we're doing something, listing things like this is a youth event, this is our youth orienteering league, we're getting kids off the computers and outside, educating kids, that will give us some discounts, sometimes up to, half off. I have never, besides those programs that are offered, I've never been able to convince someone to lower their fees or try to barter with them. What they say is the price is, I'm not going to find, if they're going to say we can come to their land, I'm going to, as long as it's somewhat reasonable, we're going to pay that fee.
Okay. Mary, anything to add?
Sure. We deal with 3 different states, and each of them is quite different. New Jersey's become extremely unreliable on handing out a permit, and also extremely expensive. I mean, they started at $250 and then, aim at adding park ranger fees and various other things. Where Pennsylvania is rather reasonable, So far, it's just $25, which God bless America. But, again, we donate a lot to Pennsylvania, so it's good. And county parks and vary in all the counties that we deal with. Delaware, working with the couple parks that we've been working with, they've reduced their fees on us. So that's been thankful. Not that, like Jennifer said, not that we're not doing horribly financially, but we just, it really would rather not have to pay lots of money on the permit, but we do what we have to do, right? To get these people, get everybody out orienteering. So.
And Joseph, your turn for that?
Yeah, the nonprofit status is critical for us because if we're using a public facility, they're pretty much saying that if you can't do it, you can't make money off of our facility is pretty much what the rules are. And so by being a nonprofit, it allows us to charge entry fees. The other thing that's happened recently is that parks have told us that we cannot handle any money in the park, any cash.
Yeah.
Because they're concerned that that's going to bring someone out who might want to try to steal the money or threaten people. And that's worked out quite well, because I guess during COVID we started with only online entries, and then it turned out that a lot of the things that we did for COVID have turned out to be really convenient, that we're just continuing. Like if we have a large facility, a large entry coming in, we can restrict people coming in at particular times, so we don't have a whole bunch of people lining up. And so that we did that initially for COVID, and then it turns out, wow, that's a whole lot nicer, because you can interact with the people individually, and you don't have people waiting in line and rushing to get out, and you don't have, it really smooths things out. And then not collecting money at the park has really simplified lines and all that kind of stuff. And I'll tell you something that we do that's, I guess it's a little different than what other clubs do. But all of our policies are designed to make it easier for the volunteers. The club is run for the volunteers, not for the public. And so the result is that we have a lot of volunteers who are ready to help, and it works out for the public too. We have plenty of people coming to our events. We don't have a lot of we don't do a lot of publicity. Publicity all seems to be word of mouth. People tell other people that this is something that's fun to do, and they bring their friends out and their family. So that's basically our experience.
Okay, thank you. I have seen one hand go up with presumably a question or comment. Martha, go ahead.
Oh, you know what? You guys jumped into that one to my question, which was, have you had any luck in negotiating fees? We had a recent thing I was putting in the chat that we have a training program for a youth training program that we're just getting going the second year. We had 13 kids in the training program using once a week, using a different Portland park. And halfway through, a new person came in and figured out we had charged $60 per participant. And therefore we needed to have a permit for each one of those parks. And it was going to be about $200 per park for 13 kids. And, and it was quite the crisis. We convinced them at least to help us get through with only paying a couple $100 total to get through this year. But now we're like, they admit that their policies don't fit us, but they don't know what to do about it. And I don't know if has anyone tried to help the land managers figure out how to handle us? In those kind of things. We have the same thing. We have trainings, and we're going to have a bunch of trainings this summer, and it just kind of makes it become not viable.
Okay, anyone want to react to that from the panel or the audience? If not, I think it was Guy just asked about the time blocks. I'll say the QOC uses 15-minute time blocks that you register for online as when you'll check in for the event, but they aren't very strictly enforced. And when you check in versus how long after that you actually start, no one is paying much attention to in general. You guys, DVOA, COC, BOK, who are doing similar things, how strictly do you enforce your time blocks?
We do, DVOA doesn't. We actually still on our registration, we ask for kind of like, 10 to 11, 11 to 12, 12 to 1. We don't really enforce it. We do have been getting a lot of JRTCs. We do ask them to, when they show up, to basically send one of each out if I have 7 units, I have every 10 minutes, send one of each out. We have them waive their own. That way we don't have those lines at start. It's, as we all know, having a huge line at start is frustrating. So for everybody. So you can't give the beginners attention. You have to, deal with that. So they've been very respectful and pretty good. So, but that's how we've been handling our starts.
At Cascade, our largest series is our winter series, which goes from November to February. On average, we have 500 people per event. It's a combination of our youth orienteering league and adults. We absolutely have assigned times spread out over 3 hours to help just slowly filter people out, and then they come back in. It's worked very well. So we do assign times for that. Some of our
those events are, you basically have to run them like NRE weekends.
Yes, we do. Our aim for that series is to run it like an A meet, to also have that practice for that. Yes, absolutely. Our second largest event also has us choose a start times called our Ultimate Orienteering Series, which is in the spring and early summer. We do choose times for that as well, because that event is can be 100 to 125 people. Our smaller events are come when you want, anytime between usually an hour to 2 hour window. So we have all the range of assigned to not assigned.
Yeah, we don't enforce it at all. People pretty much respect the time. They tell us what time they're going to come, and we don't even pay attention to it, but it works out quite nicely. The only thing that is kind of interesting was the biggest problem we have is with parking. So, and that's the reason that our park managers are limiting the number of people, is because the number of cars that are going to be going into the park. And so one of the problems we had was with the JROTC bringing, busloads of kids. And the way we worked around that was we told the park, or the park suggested, and what we did was we have them come before the opening. So we get things set up early, and then the general public says that the starts are from 12 to 2, and everyone has to be back by 4. But the JROTC comes at like 9 or 10, and they're in and out before the public comes in. So that's one of the ways we've dealt with large numbers of people.
Expand your window. That's a good suggestion.
Yeah. With that, we're a few minutes over our theoretically allotted hour, and I don't want to impose particularly on Matt, who's competing in ARDF tomorrow morning, to keep recording. So thank you to all 3 of our panelists. Thank you to all of you for showing up to participate in the discussion. We might actually have to revisit this topic with another set of people several months or a year or 2 in the future. I'm sure we haven't exhausted it, and I didn't get to all my questions. Just to say, I don't know what the July forum is. We haven't figured that out, which is one of the reasons we're looking for help with producing these. If you or someone in your club has a passion for educating people about orienteering and might want to be involved, please give them my email address. We will figure something out for July. I believe I've got someone lined up and a topic lined up for August. But thank you all for coming tonight.
Thank you for organizing it, John.
Yeah. And good night, everyone.
Good night.